Welcome to Bread Radio. I'm your host, August Acker, aka Bread. Of course, Bread Radio is a podcast with video games. It is Wednesday, November 25th, 2020. We're on episode 16, I believe, of the show. Wow, we made it. 16. This podcast can drive. Of course, you can listen to Bread Radio wherever you listen to podcasts. If there's somewhere you listen to podcasts and it's not there, let me know. I'll be happy to oblige and figure out how to get my show where you listen to it. It's also available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, pretty much everywhere out there. If you like what you hear and you want to support the show, of course, the best thing you can do is tell a friend. But if you'd like to support it monetarily, you can do so. You can buy merch at breadradio.live. Breadradio.live/merch specifically will get you that page. You got some mugs on there, a couple t-shirts, I think even a windbreaker. That's pretty neat. If you'd like to support it like subscription, help me out month to month, create this show for you, you can do so at patreon.com/breadradio. I think I only have 2 tiers there. I don't build a ton into it because it's a voluntary thing. I'm not one of those that has like, oh, you get like this, you get a free tote bag if you give me $500 and blah, 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 blah. It's just like, hey, if you want to throw $5 to the channel, it's the same as a Twitch subscription. Since I'm not streaming as much anymore, it'd be a great help. If you have any feedback, questions, topics, if you'd like to join the show, I'm looking for someone currently, potentially a co-host, but someone that has an interest in Xbox and Microsoft, because I don't own one myself. I don't know, even if I did get one, if I'd have the bandwidth to play a ton. And truthfully, just I work best bouncing ideas off of someone. But if you have any interest in that or any of the above, you can email breadradiolive@gmail.com. Wow, we did it. We made it through the intro. I don't think I misspoke. I don't know. I'll listen back. I think last week I said it was like Saturday and I was recording on a Thursday. I think this week I nailed it. Hope everyone's been having a wonderful week. Of course, it's the 25th of November. So for those of us in the States, it means Thanksgiving's coming up. Thanksgiving tomorrow. I think I said last week that might not have a show because I'd be in Pennsylvania. We've since canceled pending a reschedule for our trip to Pennsylvania. It just didn't seem like the right thing to do to leave the state. Specifically, the zip code that I'm in has been spiking in COVID has the whole state, both where I live and where I'd be traveling. So while I think there was a responsible way to travel and participate in a Thanksgiving, it's still, optics wise, it's not really a great look. So those of you out there, I won't condemn you for having a Thanksgiving with your family, of course. Just do so safely. And if you guys are having virtual ones with your family as well, I wish you guys all the best. I don't know. Let's I don't really have a lot of updates otherwise. Like, let's just get right into video games. I don't think I want to do the whole pick my brain apart thing, portion of the show this week. It's we'll talk about it next week maybe, but first we'll talk about things I didn't play for hours on end, and then we'll kind of get into the meatier segment of Assassin's Creed, which I did pour a ton of time into this past week. So I continued playing Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Again, like a 3D platformer in the style of like Mario 3D World. Still, like, it's really fun. It's just not right now for me. Like, there's just more compelling games to play. If you have a kid, or if like a co-op game to play with like a roommate or a buddy, or it's not a very difficult game. And you know me, like, I don't love like super punishing games, but I do like a little bit of a challenge, and it's like easy enough that you could play with someone who maybe typically doesn't play video games, or like a younger sibling. But I'm looking forward to maybe like putting more time into that if I can. I bought another controller and haven't really no one's really used the controller except for me. Like I've just been rotating when the controller's about to die. So I think I'll put more time into that once I get a player 2, maybe even a player 3. Spider-Man Miles Morales, man, that game is just, I already talked about it ad nauseum. It's really good, and I think I want to get the platinum for it. It's different in the set. I think it's the Spider-Man PS4. I think is my own, like, I'm typically not a trophy hunter, but I love Spider-Man so much that I went for the platinum, and I think you get it in one playthrough. This one's a little different. I think you have to play through it twice. Like, you have to beat New Game Plus. Not only that, there's like a couple combo based trophies that have been particularly punishing for me. So I'll keep that installed for a while and probably just go back to it to swing around here and there and chip away at that New Game Plus. But damn, that game's good. It really, like, I need to slow drip it though, because it's going to be a while before we see like Spider-Man 2. So it's just, I'm just gonna have to drip feed that to get my fix until the next game comes out. Funnily enough, like, this is the first week in a while. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's the first week in a while I haven't touched my Switch at all, which means I haven't played any Hades. I don't think I've got credits to roll, but I think there's still a little bit more story to come. So I will return to that. I just haven't, I don't know. I bought that new TV. It's just been really nice to sit on the couch and play video games, you know? Perhaps the only positive thing to come out of COVID cases spiking is that I've got some free time on my hands to really pour into this new console and the new tech. Borderlands 3, I actually, it's another game that like I know has split screen, and I heard with the upgrade that it's more akin to the experience like you would have hoped for on PS4 and the previous gen of consoles, and so far, like, playing that game on the PS5 has been quite a treat. Like, it runs really well. It looks really good. It's just very, very smooth. Just a hot tip, if you're out there and you're doing something similar, like, the messaging isn't even super clear. Like, it on the homepage of Borderlands 3, there's like a little news feed, and it even says like how to transfer your PS4 data to PS5, and then when you click the article, all it tells you is how to upgrade to the PS5 version of the game. And I wasn't really sure how to get I started a new character on PS5 because like you can't just download the cloud save from PlayStation Plus and then like kick off the PS5 updated version. You have to have the PS4 version of Borderlands 3 downloaded or still have it on your PS4. Go launch Borderlands 3, upload your character to their cloud, Gearbox, I think. So I don't want to bear the lead here. Anyway, I'll get through the whole process first. Then go to your PS5 upgraded edition of Borderlands and download that character. And it's not clear whether you can do that with multiple characters or not. I seen that some people could only do one. Their golden keys aren't transferring over. Those of you who pour a ton of time to Borderlands, I've heard that like golden keys aren't like the be all end all of getting end game gear. I guess they've got a bunch of end game content to do that. I haven't rolled credits on that game personally, which is kind of why I downloaded on PS5. That's another game I've kind of been holding out to play multiplayer with someone. And now I've purchased it twice, but whatever, because I have it on PC as well. But I don't know. It's just like I kind of scoffed at the whole like Xbox smart delivery system, but like the way that this, I don't know if my point being is like I don't know if this was like a Gearbox decision or a Sony decision, which drove Gearbox's decision that this is how they were going to handle it. But man, the optics around like some of the backwards compatibility and different versions of games between the two generations is just like really clunky in my experience so far. Like really poor. So I have like a new character I started that I guess I didn't really have to, but I didn't know that I didn't have to because the messaging around it has just been so piss poor. And some of the stuff I loved most about the console experience is that it's mostly like plug and play. And Don't get me wrong, it's still way more plug and play than a PC setup these days. But there's a lot of thought the consumer has to put in about like memory management, save file management, game management, and like understanding the complications and the repercussions of maybe starting a game on PS4. Like what's going to happen, for example, with Cyberpunk. I didn't even know until this week that it's just backwards compatible on the new consoles, and the updated version for next gen isn't coming out till sometime next year. Like there's not a date there. I guess I wouldn't expect there to be a date there, considering the recent delays. But that's it's just really, like, I don't mean to sound like a pessimist, but it just sucks, in my opinion. It just sucks. I don't know why I say in my opinion so often. Everything on this show is my opinion. So thanks for hanging out in my brain. Thanks for joining me in my bedroom. I appreciate it. Outside of those games though, like it's really, like I said, it's been all Valhalla all week, all Assassin's Creed all week. Save for maybe like a short break to play some PC games last Thursday. I've just wanted to dive into something single player, and this has been perfect. So I think last we spoke about this, I was maybe an hour and a half in that first area. I'd say like I looked at my save file and it says around 35 hours. I would guess I'm more like 30-ish playtime hours in. There were a couple moments where I just let the game sit on while I was doing something for work or, making dinner or otherwise. So we'll shave 5 hours off of that for some of that idle time. But if you were to ask me like, hey, August, like, how do you feel about Assassin's Creed Valhalla? I guess my answer would probably just be like, it's complicated. It really is. I think Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like an amalgamation of the good, the bad, and the ugly. It really is. So I've got some bullet points here. I'm not really going to organize. Like I thought about organizing them to good, bad, and ugly, but there's just a lot, and a lot of the issues and a lot of what's good like feeds in to something else that might be bad. So with the cyclical nature of my opinions, I decided to just put some bullet points down. All right, we don't have to go through the whole background and all the story, but the story, like, it takes some time to get going, but once it does, it's honestly probably the driving factor for me, like pushing me forward through the game right now. I think the content, the historical content, is maybe handled a little bit ham-fistedly. I mean, let's not mince any words. Like, the Vikings were invaders, like they were raiders. In this game, you are pillaging, and like literally there's a raid mechanic, and you're raiding monasteries for supplies to build up like your own village. And like, it doesn't seem like the game turns inward at all to like really understand if what like, are we doing the right thing here? Like, yes, we're making our own way, but we're doing it by ransacking the current inhabitants of England. And in my experience so far, like, we haven't really touched on any of the morality of that, and I don't think we will touch on the morality. So I don't know. I have some complicated feelings about that. The mechanic itself, like if we just take all context out of it, is pretty fun. Fun in most ways, underwhelming in others, which you'll probably find me saying about a couple different aspects of this game. I guess we'll just talk about some of the issues. I guess sound is not great. When you think about raiding and these like bigger scale battles that they've kind of like leaned into, the sound never matches the scale of the battle, to the point where you could be standing like 25 feet away from like a pretty heavy skirmish and you just hear like two different NPC characters yelling. Like, the sound design in this game is just not that great in my opinion. I just, when they were talking about the PS5, and I know this isn't exclusive, but there's been like a heavy emphasis on audio, especially like 3D audio, and like all of that tech I feel like is basically wasted on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Also the raid mechanic, it's like the battles, while they're fun, I'd say combat in general, it gets better with time. When I first started playing, I was like, man, like, what is this? Like, combat is way clunkier than it ever was. Like Spider-Man, it's so much smoother. So much smoother. I wouldn't say the AI is like smart or anything in Spider-Man. I would actually say it's a long shot there, but I don't know if we compare them 1-to-1. I mean, one's a superhero, one's a Viking. You're basically like a demigod. I feel like in Assassin's Creed games, you're always like some sort of demigod. But the AI is just like really dumb, and somehow I don't know what they did to it. It feels dumber somehow than Odyssey, and maybe it's not. Like, maybe that's me just like imprinting my own opinion because I really enjoyed Odyssey. I did stealth through a lot of Odyssey and had a good time doing that. I've had a much harder time doing any sort of stealth mechanics in Valhalla because I almost feel like stealth is like a waste of my time in Valhalla. Like, I'm much further in the game. I talked to some buddies, some of you guys maybe even listening to this cast, about like what my experience was like the first few hours through the game. They're just like, oh yeah, dude, don't even bother with stealth. Just go in and, go full berserker. And once I started doing that, like, yeah, like my eyes kind of opened. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, like this is kind of sweet. But still, like when I'm going nuts in a battle, like the AI is just so poor. Like, it's been a criticism for a long time of Assassin's Creed games that, the enemies just like wait one by one to take you on. And sure, like that's not unfounded, right? But in this game, like, sometimes no one will be attacking me, and it's like the AI can't decide whether to attack an NPC or me, and they're just going around targeting all the different options, and they end up just standing there and doing nothing until I run up and hit him in the head with my hammer. And they're like, okay, now I'm engaged with you. And that just doesn't feel very good. Once you start treating them just like crash test dummies, and you're like, I'm just going to run through everyone here, like with no regard for my own health or anyone's health and safety. Like, that feels good, right? And once you have your skills built out, you basically get skill points for completing different activities, and you can spec into like buffs for your character as well as new abilities. And once you start building those abilities out and like sort of defining how you're gonna crunch through all these crash test dummies, the game shines in a much better light. I wouldn't say like shines as in like it's really, really good, but it shines in a much better light than it did. It just takes a while to get there. The other thing that they did that I really appreciated, like the skill tree, it's not so much a tree, but they kind of do that like constellation skill setup like Skyrim does, but they let you kind of guide where your skills are going to go. So I initially started with, they've got 3 different classes like bear, wolf, and raven. So I started going bear, which is seemingly like the like let's fuck shit up class, and then slowly found like revealed more parts of the skill trees, and you can actually like connect bear over to wolf, and like wolf has some stuff that might help with more ranged, and raven has more stuff that's more like stealth focused. And like now I have someone who's like really focused on just fucking shit up, but like in a pinch can do some stealth. But I have to keep the bear skill tree filled out because stealth is so like clunky At least for me in this game, like I'm sure I'll get like a message, someone just being like, "Yo, get good." But it's so clunky in this game that it just doesn't feel viable. Quite frankly, it just doesn't feel good on its own, and that's disappointing. Like, not necessarily for just an Assassin's Creed game, because I mean, this is the direction Assassin's Creed has been going for some time now. Like, I know it's a Viking game with the Assassin's Creed branding on it, but nonetheless, like, it's still a little bit disappointing. Like, the combination of like the mechanics alongside the really dopey AI is just, it's not great. They also made they have that bird mechanic that I think it was Origins that introduced that you can use to like scout and tag enemies, at least until this game. You can use it for points of interest. It was a really useful tool, and maybe they thought it was a crutch, but in this game you can't tag enemies with your bird. You can't highlight enemies with your bird. You can't really scout that well with your bird, in my opinion. Like, you can't get closer to ground level at all, and it flies like just like 15 feet too high over everything for you to get any like useful tactical information. Like, I find myself squinting, like, is that a person? Is that a stump? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. They also like like in games past, like they would gate areas and enemies with like an actual level, like based upon your character's level. Now they go off like a power rating, which is which is like sort of a different sort of soft limit. Like, you can get past power rating to a certain point, but it just means like you're upgrading your gear at a steady clip. So in the past, you'd be able to tag your enemy with this bird, and it would put like the level over top the enemy's head. And then you could go around and summarily like destroy everyone. Now you have to use what is called Odin sight to sort of like ping this radius around you, and anyone in the area who's captured by that like glows red. And I just think visually, like, it's really gross. It's just like not good. I'll say it. It's not good. Like, I don't like the way the enemies highlight. They're kind of hard to track through buildings and trees and the rest of the environment, because you're kind of dealing with a lot of shades of brown in England, and they're highlighted red. You have to be closer to, like, so you can't, like, what I used to do was go outside an area, I would scout it with the bird, tag all my enemies, go through, and then like, I felt pretty badass. I'd set a goal for myself, like, okay, I'm gonna get through this whole thing, no one's gonna see me or find an enemy. Boom, cleared it all out. Awesome. In this, like, it's so hard to like tag enemies without being in a close proximity that it makes stealth. And again, this is another for some people, like, that might be a positive for them, but for me it's not. It just doesn't feel great at all. And I guess my point is, like, so for exploration, what I always go for is like that doesn't always give you a waypoint. Sometimes you have to go off of, like, it'll be like, hey, he's to the east of this river in a forest, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then you kind of have to look on your map and be like, okay, I think that's this area, and I'll find it. Or you can put a waypoint. They give you that option, exploration option. I wish they'd given you, like, I wish they had extended that to like the tagging system. Like, hey, like, you won't be able to tag anyone, but you will be able in a close proximity to like see folks and then track where they're going for a limited amount of time. Or you can like use your bird to tag enemies and they'll stay on your like, I wish you could do like a hybrid combination of like the experience and the difficult. It's sort of like an augmented difficulty rather than what they did. But maybe that like completely broke how they wanted the game to be played. Anyway, that all stemmed from me trying to discuss the story. But anyway, the beats of gameplay are kind of like, hey, like, we're in this new foreign land, we need allies. you go look at like this map, and they're basically like, hey, you can go here, here, and here. Like, they'll give you a little backstory as to why you should go to this one area and what might be happening. You'll be like, I'm going to commit to trying to make these people our allies. So you go there. There's a whole arc of story missions. Throughout that arc, you can do like some side contracts. There's like the side activities range from like mysteries on the map, which are basically like replacing some of the side quests or side quests that you can grab from the villagers in your town as you upgrade the area, or like they have these cairnstone challenges where you have to stack these stones up. I've only come across one. It was pretty easy. I heard it gets much harder with a controller moving forward. I don't really, unless the benefits, like I stand to gain a lot either through story or gear, like I don't see myself interacting with that side mini game. There's drinking activities, which the first time is like really fun to have a chug off versus a Viking or a Saxon, and then it just kind of gets tedious. It overstays its welcome. I only interact with those because you can get more basically the Templar equivalent in this game. You can get clues from, sometimes it's like, hey, beat this person in a drinking challenge or a dice game. The dice mini game is like their Gwent, and their side game where you can pour a bunch of time into it. It's kind of fun, but it's not something I'm gonna come back to the game for. And then they have flighting, which is like Viking rap battles, which is the most distilled way to describe it. And I would say those go so far as to like not really be fun and not really be quippy pretty much at all. But you do gain a charisma gain, a charisma stat, which helps you in like story missions. It unlocks like other dialogue options. So whenever I see one of those, like they're worth doing, even if they're not really like compelling in any way. So like there is like fun stuff to do in the moment to moment gameplay, like unlocking your viewpoints as you always do. Finding wealth so you can build up your settlement. Some of the side activity, sometimes they surprise you, but most of the time they don't. But like really the main story arcs are what's driving you through the game. And I'd say that's probably where Assassin's Creed Valhalla succeeds most completely. It's certainly what's driving me through the game, but again, that's just one man's opinion. Hunting down the Order of the Ancients, which again is like basically the Templar equivalent, is always going to be like some of the, like, that's kind of what drove me through Odyssey. Like, oh yeah, like I've got this checklist of like I'm gonna like investigate and hunt them down. Like that was really fun for me in Odyssey. It's definitely one of the more fun parts for me in this game too. Like exploration and mystery, like I'm a sucker for. Like that's going to be a running trend on the show. Apologies in advance, but also I'm not sorry because I love it, right? The game puts you like on the rails for like some of the higher stakes targets, which makes sense. They don't want you finding like the big bads before the end of the game. And just like in Odyssey, you can unlock clues to find some of the lower order members. The main difference in this is that like in Odyssey, they had mercenaries that would just be peppered around the map. That kind of like replicated the Nemesis system from what's the Shadow of Mordor from years past. It would have like, it would assign a random level and rank of mercenary, and then he would either be weak to fire or strong against fire, or have a poison weapon, or have a bear with him or her. And he had a pike, but it was always seemingly kind of like it would just generate random enemies for you that would gallivant around the map. In this game, there really isn't like a mercenary equivalent. Well, there kind of is, but they're called zealots, but there isn't nearly as many of them, and they don't they're like characters with a background, and they don't respawn. Like there aren't going to be more zealots. At least I haven't come across any ones yet, and they don't have like their own menu. So Who knows? Maybe something does reveal itself. Like I said, I'm 30 hours in. I think in Odyssey, there were some like reveals of new mercenary types, at least in like DLCs later on. So that could be something they've planned down the road for a later quest line. But so far, like I don't know if the mercenary system, at least in the reading I had done, was like totally well received. I enjoyed it. Like it was fun for me to like watch these. The mercenaries basically like serve the purpose of a wanted level. That doesn't really exist in this game. So like you could have there's just not like you could pay off a bounty basically. In this game there's no bounty. And that kind of feeds into my next point, which is there's a lot less just like stuff. Odyssey often became like this inventory management simulator where like it was a lot of random gear that you would take and sell en masse to a trader, and then you would bank all of that gear to upgrade. Instead, like it's really just resource-based upgrades to a small subset of gear that you actually find around the map. Like there's one type of this helmet and you upgrade this one type of helmet and you add runes to this helmet to like customize it in the way you want it to be customized. And I appreciate what they did with their inventory system. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot less like it's not as necessary to like break open every door and try and find more gear so that you can like recycle it all. Or just go kill a bunch of mobs or enemies so that you can take all their gear and go sell it all because you need to upgrade the level of your helmet. Now it's like you get that naturally through raiding and doing the other activities you would normally be doing to push the story forward and to like improve your settlement. So that improvement, like the fat they cut, like don't get me wrong, there's still fluff in this game, but they cut a ton of fat in Odyssey in my opinion, while still like having pretty compelling story content and side content. But the Ubi did a really good job of trimming some of that like inventory fat. Is it still there in like a small way? Like, yeah, like it is. But I no longer spend like 30 minutes at a time just chugging through inventory. Let's see, what haven't I covered? I mean, like the game again, I'm not running in performance mode, I'm running in resolution mode, and for the most part the game runs like pretty buttery smooth. It looks really good if you don't look too close. Like when you're riding through the countryside, like the looking and seeing a mountain in the distance, and you can see a viewpoint off in the distance and birds are flying around it, and a castle is up high, and like you over to your left you see a river and someone's paddling down the river and there's a settlement, and I don't know, like it looks really good. The lighting is really good as well. Like lighting this generation is going to be like, that's truly going to be next gen. I only say like when you look closely do things like start to sort of muddy a bit because, like I get it. They didn't put that much, like you can always tell who's an important character and who isn't by how much like goes into the modeling. And most of the NPCs, like they look all the same. They kind of look last gen. Feeding into the AI, like if you're like taking down a town, or like raiding a town, the villagers don't really act in an expected way except running around like chickens with their head cut off. Like they really should just flee, but often they're just like, I don't know, like they do their best of like simulating a realistic world as long as you're not interacting with that world. As soon as you start to interact with that world, like the facade starts to come down a little bit. But it's still really, really good to look at. It runs mostly, I've run into a couple, like it's chugged here and there, especially when I got down to like the bigger area, like one of the city areas. I won't say what, you could probably guess what city area in England might chug, but yeah, I think in general too, just like the choice of the setting, it's like a little bit more Red Dead than it is Odyssey. When you think about Odyssey, they obviously Athens was huge, right? Well, there really isn't an Athens equivalent in England at this time. So like you're dealing a lot more with like settlements and one-off like huts and farms and tents and like at first I was a little disappointed, but I actually think that does some good things for the scale of the game, because most places you can interact with in some way, like enter, or like there's a puzzle to get some wealth out of the building, to build your settlement up. And I don't know, that's it. Just like in Red Dead, where you can interact with most of the houses you come across, or there's like a note that might world build. Like a lot of the world building and like stuff that you find in notes, or like story beats that you find in notes that hint at like later story elements, or like some of that emergent TM gameplay is really what I stick around for. The other thing that's really awesome are load times. I think this is the trend we'll see this generation. But I still feel spoiled by it. Like in Miles, they were pretty much non-existent. In this game, like Odyssey's load times are pretty long, especially on console. But Valhalla's load times are greatly diminished. And while like the placement of some of the viewpoints and fast travel spots isn't always ideal, fast traveling is like not the same pain that it might have been in the past. Like I, out of habit, will pick my phone up and start looking at Twitter or something when I go to fast travel, and then boom, like already ready to go, ready to play again. So that's really, really awesome. That's the really unorganized stream of consciousness thoughts I have on Valhalla right now. I anticipate I'll probably put another 30 into this. I'm gonna see the story through. I think I've made peace. Like every place I went, I was like, I'm gonna snag every little bit of wealth that I can out of this area. The wealth mechanic is how you upgrade a lot of things. But I think that's a little bit self-sabotaging. It's gonna take too much time, so I'm not gonna mainline the story. I'm definitely gonna like take my time and have a good time with it, but I'm not gonna like I'm not 100%ing this. I'm not gonna platinum it. Like I'm gonna have my time with this game though. So like I know I brought up a lot of negative points. Let me be clear. I'm having a really good time playing Valhalla, and honestly that I'm not playing it right now is kind of bothering me. Like I want to go play right now. But it's not a perfect game. I mean, I think there's a difference between a game that's fun, a game that's good, and a game that should be like critically acclaimed. A game that's like, I mean, there's a Venn diagram where, you know, a game can be good and technically powerful and impressive and critically acclaimed. This is probably checks only a couple of the boxes. And it checks a couple of the boxes and only a couple of the verticals. Like technically really impressive, beautiful, but also the AI is not very, you know what I mean? Like some of it is very technically impressive, while other parts are definitely showing like their age, and feel more like copy pastes from the prior generation. So really quickly, let's go into a quick news segment before we end the show today. Man, I remember saying like when at the offset of this, I was going to try and keep these shows at 30 minutes. It's just hard to do. I like talking about games, if you can't tell. So about a week ago, like just as we were posting the last show, a major Smash tournament, Melee specifically, I think there were a couple other Smash games that were involved, hosted by the Big House Online, was shut down, and it was shut down because of a cease and desist from Nintendo. I think they tweeted, and I think it was mostly related to the use of like an emulator that has improvements called Slippy for Smash, because Melee, of course, coming out on the GameCube, doesn't have an online component. And the only way to do stuff in COVID right now is online. So Sliply allowed online matchmaking, match mirroring, match recording, and most importantly, like a really good, it supported like this really good net code, which is ever important in the fighting game space, competitive space. And I'm just like, I'm terrible at Super Smash Brothers. I do like watching Super Smash Brothers, and it does pain me to see like fans rally around a game and like basically start like a grassroots movement to keep their own competitive scene alive, and it really doesn't bring any harm to Nintendo, in my opinion. If anything, it's mostly good press when these tournaments go off well. But it's just a shame to see all of that work kind of for naught. That's got big implications for the Melee Smash team, like or scene. Like how long can they sustain their competitive scene when like we can't do any in-person events? And maybe that's the way Nintendo wants it. Maybe they really want I don't know what they're saying internally, but maybe they're like, we need everyone to come to the Smash on the Switch. And I feel like the guys that are playing Melee will just be like, no, like we're not doing that. And Nintendo's also gonna be like, well then, no, you can't play online with Melee. It's just a bad look for Nintendo. The game is really good. Like the games that Nintendo push out are really good for the most part. Like they're an innovator. Like they're industry standard. There's not another really good brawler in the same vein, a competitive brawler of Smash. I mean, you saw what PlayStation did with like PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which is up there for like worst video game names other than like Kingdom Hearts 365 over 2 dash memory, you know what I mean? But it really makes me wish that there was like an olive branch from a Sony or Microsoft that was like, hey, we are going to make a game that like a fighting brawler game, and we're going to support you guys. Like we're going to support the scene because we understand that like a healthy competitive scene and a healthy fandom is good for us. And while I'm sure there are people at Nintendo that do believe that, the message from the top down seems to be pretty clear, and that's disappointing. Next, something I'm really pumped up about, IO Interactive announces a new project, and it's James Bond. Project is codenamed Project 007. It seems to be a ways away, especially because as part of their brief, they're looking for hiring. I'll just read directly from the site. It's Bond, James Bond. Project 007, working title, is a brand new James Bond game to be developed and published by IO Interactive, featuring a wholly original Bond story. Players will step into the shoes of the world's favorite secret agent to earn their 00 status in the very first James Bond origin story. IO Interactive is currently recruiting elite talent from around the world to join the team that will build out this exciting and unique gaming title. So there really isn't any news out there except for a teaser trailer and the news that it exists. This is one, to generate excitement, and two, to attract talent very clearly. So it seems like it's like a pretty far ways away, especially when there's a lot of the team still focused on Hitman. Hitman 3 is coming up. And they've got VR support for that too. So I'm sure there's like a large majority of the team is still focused on Hitman. It's probably, they probably have a small team that started 007, Project 007. But man, if it's anything like Hitman, like if it's 007 with a Hitman twist, I don't know how goofy they go with it. Maybe they don't have you going around in like a flamingo costume as James Bond, but the goofy gadgets that they have is like totally up James, like 007's alley. It's like it just screams M. If anything, Hitman took from 007. So I'm pretty IOI, like, I'm a big fan of IOI. I love what they did with Hitman. I try and get everyone to play Hitman, even if I don't play it a ton. Like, I just love watching people play Hitman and enjoy Hitman. So I'm just like really, really bullish on Project 007. So I'll have a close eye on news about this. So if you're not going to pay attention, be damn sure that I will. Next, the Game Awards are on their way, and it's one of my favorite events of the year. Like, I know we don't need like an award show to legitimize gaming as a medium, but it's still fun to see it celebrated, in my opinion. I think, it does a lot. There's a lot as far as like ads and sponsorship revenue that come from it. Like, it's definitely mostly a long ad read, but the awards still serve like a pretty fun backdrop. I would have liked to have seen more diversity in the titles nominated. But my point is, like, I kind of wonder if like the timing of the event kind of works against itself, and it kind of helps inform my prior opinion about it, like being a longer like ad read. More people are going to be inside, at least in some of the bigger gaming markets in the Northern Hemisphere, like the United States, for example, in the winter. Like, personally, I'd prefer a summer show over the winter. Why? Because a lot of the largest or blockbuster games come out in the holiday period. So there's like no time for them to breathe and really be considered for the Game Awards. So let's look at the Game of the Year contenders. It kind of helps prove my point. Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us 2. There are some definite contenders on there, and I'd say most of them are worthy of that. I don't know why there's a remake on here. I wish they wouldn't. But you look at what's coming out this holiday season, your Call of Duties, well, I don't think it's a Game of the Year contender. But you look at last year with Star Wars Fallen Order, this year with Cyberpunk, which should have already been out, but with the delay is out in December now. So anything comes out in November, December has to impress pretty quickly to be like considered for any of these the Game of the Year or nominations. So it just makes sense to me to like put the award show outside of the window of these releases. Like, a lot of stuff you're seeing these days is being pushed to January or early spring. Like, you've seen it with Horizon. And then the other release, like, it's got like the beginning of the year now is its own release window. And then the end of the year has its holiday release window. So summer seems like the perfect time in between those two windows to talk about like the past year. But it's at the end of the year. It makes sense. There's a Game of the Year. This is when everyone does their Game of the Year list. But you also have to wonder, because if the considerations are put in place to get this done at the end of the year too, because everyone's going to be inside and their viewership numbers, they can pump those. If anything, I'd love to see the Game Awards get pushed to like January if there was like a compromise, maybe even February. But I get it. It's much easier to generate hype at the end of the year, especially when folks are going to be indoors. This year, perhaps more than any. We won't go through more categories, but they did add more esports categories. My only comment there is I love to see that. You guys know I'm a huge esports fan. And after I see who some of the winners are, it might get me to watch. Like, I'd love to watch. Like, I want to know what's so. Like, I watched some stuff on Dota. I've watched some stuff on League, but I know nothing about the games themselves. So I'm hoping I can like find a couple personalities to follow and then see if I can, get into those scenes, using them as like the jumping off point. Oh man, my voice is starting to go. Can you guys hear that? I don't know. Yeah, I should probably start like. That's the other reason I want to co-host, so I can like start chugging water in between like all my sentences, because it's just this like constant stream of consciousness that I'm just blah blah, like barfing out talking point after talking point, and having a chance to like breathe is like something I'm looking for. Last news story I've got for this week: gameplay for Cyberpunk surfaced from leaked PS4 copies. Detailed some bugs. I won't really cover what they are because CD Projekt Red released their own preview to basically demonstrate, like, hey, we're good. The only concern I have is like those demos that they pushed out were on the PS4 Pro, and most of the other demos they've shown are on Xbox Series X or PS4 Pro. Really wonder how those base consoles are going to like chug on this game. If I were like a cautious gamer, if you still have like a base console, I presume you're pretty much like, you like to not swim in the wake, but you ride right on not the crest of the wave, but just behind it, right? If I were you, I'd probably wait to see what performance is like, see what the digital foundries of the world have to say about performance of the game on that base hardware. Because sometimes the fact when they're not showing something, you see it often with game companies, that's sometimes telling of what the performance might be like. That in combination with all the delays. On the same note with Cyberpunk, they also announced that they're going to have a streamer mode to help avoid like some of those DMCA takedowns that have been happening. Like, they've been plaguing Twitch and YouTube for some time now. It's kind of reached its apex recently. My point here is that it's just kind of crazy that a game company needs to do this. I really wonder in the future if music licensing for video games just like becomes way more complicated or even way more expensive because you have to work in the licensing for potential streams. Now, are game companies going to take on the brunt of those costs? I almost guarantee they won't. So maybe not. Like, it's always going to leak down to the consumer, which is really a shame. But it's just crazy that this even has to happen. Like, I really don't like the AI robot takedowns. It's like often inaccurate or messing with people's livelihoods. Like, you see people get like 2 strikes on YouTube and then like they've got like maybe 1 million followers. That, while that would be nice for me, but like, let's say I had 2 strikes, like, what am I going to do for content knowing that like I'm on the razor's edge for basically my livelihood? It's they're like, historically the follow-up for creators from these larger companies is just not very good. So I don't know. At the end of the day, like, the corporations are probably going to win. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do, and we'll find ways to deal with it. But it's just a bad look. It really is. Anyway, not to end on a sour note, but next week we're definitely going to have a ton more Valhalla. I didn't have any time to play Bug Snacks this past week, but we'll probably get into that. If not this week, we'll definitely get into the next. I fully intend on beating that. Perhaps more Sackboy. Definitely going to plug some time into Borderlands. It's just fun to have like a shooter that I don't have to try hard at, if that makes sense. And weirdly enough, don't raise your eyebrow at this, but I might try the new WoW expansion. I'm not sure. Got some buddies who are really into WoW. Like, we've been doing those game nights, and I think I could use a break from some of the competitiveness. There's too much of that going on in everyday life. So maybe I might give that a shot with them, humor them for a bit, but we'll see. Again, this has been Bread Radio. This is episode 16. Listen wherever you do to podcasts and watch on YouTube. If you want to support, please tell a friend. Purchase merch, breadradio.live/merch. Support in a subscription model on Patreon, patreon.com/breadradio. Or just interact with me. You can do so at breadradiolive@gmail.com. And again, I'm looking for someone to jump in with an opinion on Microsoft and Xbox. I'd really love to. I've been tweeting out kind of regularly, like, hey, what's going on with Xbox? Hey, what's going on with Xbox? I'd just love to hear about how people are enjoying their Series X and what their experience is like, even in like a Valhalla. Like, what's the performance been like there on a different console? What's it been like on PC? So the world's better with more opinions in them, and I'm looking for a few more myself. So until next time, I'll leave you guys with the the common moniker. Be cool to one another. It's Bread, and I'm out. Good night.